Hello and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host Josh Size, and I'm gonna jump right into this episode. Apparently, Lomachenko has signed his end of the deal for a potential clash with George Kambosos. I'm not sure where it's gonna be, but apparently the first fight will take place between George Kambosos and Lomachenko, and then if George Kambosos were to lose, he would be able to get a rematch with Lomachenko. Now, there have been several fights mentioned between George Kambosos and several opponents. One is with Devin the Dream Haney, and the other is with Lomachenko. Now, if you subscribe to the Devin Haney is the real WBC world champion, George Kambosos isn't undisputed, then in terms of, I want to say, championship, legacy, etc., I would have to say becoming undisputed is probably the ultimate task you can achieve in your respected weight division. However, I'm going to put an asterisk on that in terms of risk, reward, and potential legacy. One, the WBC has recognized that George Kambosos is the undisputed champion. I know there's a back and forth. Several other sanctioning bodies don't acknowledge the franchise. And I think the sanctioning bodies are realizing that having these super champions, having elevated champions that don't have to fulfill their mandatories, have come back to bite them in the ass. But when I say legacy and risk and going for greatness, I think it's hard to say that Devin Haney is the right match for George Kambosos. When you talk about legacy and you talk about a champion, you want to often fight the best and prove yourself to the rest, right? That's your motto. Now, Devin Haney is the WBC world champion. He got it when Devin Haney wasn't as popular. Remember when Lomachenko was trying to unify, Devin Haney was still very young and an up-and-coming prospect. Yeah, he worked his way up. Sure, he fought these fights to make himself the mandatory, but the WBC, after elevating Canelo, decided that, hey, Lomachenko fits the brand of the WBC. They see he's trying to unify, and his goal is 4 belts. That was the whole point of moving up to 135. At 130, the champions, the promoters, it just couldn't happen. So he decided to move up. He felt it was better to make it happen at a higher weight class. And he almost was successful. He beat Luke Campbell. He beat Sniper Pedraza. And then he fought Lomachenko. He also beat one more champion, but it's slipping my mind right now. I'll get back to it and correct it. However, he got the 4 belts. He almost got 4 belts. Then he fought Teofimo Lopez, who beat Richard Comey. And then you guys remember what happened. Teofimo shocked Lomachenko. So Lomachenko doesn't have any belts. People are going to be like, oh, he doesn't have any belts. But Lomachenko, hands down, has a better resume than Devin Haney. He's not a champion, but he did hold 3 championships. He lost to Teofimo Lopez, who was a true champion, who beat the champion, Richard Comey, to get that IBF belt. And then he beat a champion that had 3 belts. Say what you want about Lomachenko, but Lomachenko's no punk. Lomachenko's no scrub. You may not like him. And at certain points, I thought he was a sore loser. And I hated the way he carried himself. And everyone thought he was the best thing since sliced bread and God, in the God of boxing incarnate. And that rubbed me the wrong way. But when Teo beat him, Lomachenko was still a formidable opponent. Then he went on to beat Nakatani and then Richard Comey. Devin Haney fought a bloated 130-pounder, Jojo Diaz, who beat, in my opinion, now when you look back, Fortuna probably wasn't as good as everyone thought he was. And beating Tevin Farmer at 130 was a fantastic win. I think it was 135 or 130, but regardless, He beat Tevin Farmer. I think Devin Haney, again, deserves a title shot. I think he deserves a shot at George Kambosos. I just think that you parading around saying, oh, George Kambosos isn't undisputed. George Kambosos isn't undisputed. He beat the champion. He beat a multi-belt champion in Teofimo Lopez. Say what you want about Teo. If you like him, you don't like him. But Teofimo beat several champions. Devin Haney has yet to fight a single champion. So when you sit here and talk about resumes, who's better for your resume? If George Kambosos takes a risk and loses to Devin Haney, how is that going to look on his resume? I lost to someone that never fought a champion. Then he beat me to become undisputed champion by never once proving himself against a top 10 guy. Right? Jojo Diaz, in my opinion, is not top 10 at 135, especially not at 135. I think George Kambosos has decided he wants to fight Loma because he knows if he loses to Loma, and George Kambosos has a shot, I think Loma is going to beat him. But you lose to Loma, it's not the end of the world. Loma is a multi-belt, multi-division world champion. He's very talented. People see him as possibly one of the most skilled in the division, especially now that Teo left, the guy that beat him. You can't argue that Loma isn't the most gifted and technically proficient fighter in the division. So if Kambosos beats Lomachenko, that's a statement for the division, let alone you beat Teo, you beat Loma, then you fight Devin Haney if you want to settle that, WBC, whatever you subscribe to in terms of that narrative or whatever narrative you subscribe to. I think the Loma fight's bigger. I think more people know Loma worldwide. I know Devin Haney has a fantastic Instagram following. He says, I'm a boss, I'm a this, I'm that. I'm my own promoter. But for some odd reason, Eddie Hearn seems to speak a lot for Devin Haney. And also, Devin Haney seems to have trouble making fights. If you are your own promoter, how is it that you just can't make any fight happen? Sure, the money, whatever, fine. Maybe you're not happy with the offers that you're getting to fight George Kambosos, but if legacy and belts matter to you that much, you feel you deserve to be world renowned and you feel you want your respect, fight this dude. You said you would fight on Jupiter, and then you're saying, oh, let's see if we can maybe, not fight in Australia. I don't get it. I hear double speak from the Devin Haney side. George Kambosos has earned the right to be stubborn. He has all the leverage, right? George Kambosos beat the man, Teofimo Lopez. He has 4 belts. Say what you want about the franchise, but it's still a WBC belt. I hope the fight happens between Loma and George Kambosos. I'm getting annoyed at this parading around what fight's going to happen. Just make a fight happen. If you fight George Kambosos, Devin Haney, if you fight George Kambosos, power to you. If George Kambosos decides to fight Loma, power to them. Just make the fights happen. At this point, I don't care. Oh, franchise this front. The guy has 4 belts. You can't take that away from him. And yeah, undisputed is great, but you can't sit here and say that Loma hasn't earned his shot. Devin Haney hasn't fought anybody, even for his belt. He didn't even fight a champion. You're going to say Loma was afraid of Devin Haney, but he went on to fight Pedraza, Luke Campbell, who was ranked higher than a lot of people in the division. Luke Campbell was a champion, wasn't a franchise or WBC. He was ranked number 1 as the champ. He beat whoever he had to beat to get the championship. Teo beat Come, beat Loma. George Kambosos beat that man. He won a champion from a champion. He won the championships from the champion. Devin Haney, I'm still waiting. So I think Devin Haney is a fantastic fighter. I think it's very high risk to fight Devin Haney, and I think Haney would actually beat George Kambosos. So I understand why the risk reward for Devin Haney isn't worth it. Hearing someone based off the Devin Haney camp say, oh, he's not undisputed, Ben Davison, Eddie Hearn, DAZN, who promotes him, that's not worth it. Don't fall victim like Teofimo did. He bought into the whole hype and you saw what it cost him. So I hope the fight happens and I'm excited. If Loma were to fight George Kambosos, I think Loma's going to win and they're probably going to have 2 fights. So it is what it is at this point. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Devin Haney would lose or win against George Kambosos? And do you think Loma will win or lose? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you. I'm going to be pumping out this content over and over. And I just wanted to let you guys know that a lot of this I do on the fly, off memory, and sometimes things get a little hairy. Just understand that I will come back to you and say, hey, I'm sorry if I was wrong about anything. But yeah, I'm excited for this if it does happen. And I just want to let you guys know, thank you for all the support. Don't forget to subscribe. We're only 88 away from 1K, which is fantastic. We're only 75 or 100 away from 3,500 on Instagram at Good Boxing Podcast. I'm also on TikTok now at Good Boxing Podcast. So follow on there if you're not. Thank you so much and stay tuned.